Okay, take a seat. Take a seat.
Everybody, while you guys are coming in here, I thought I would take a moment to let you know that Lore, my company, we're starting the streaming service hopefully this summer at some point. We have some really great content that we're going to release. I'll be previewing some of that content for you at my last talk. But there's stickers. This one says Christian Movies Shouldn't Suck. They're available out there on the table, and you guys can go and take some. Put them on your laptop and your water bottle and start spreading the word about what we're doing there. So today we're going to be talking about, so I have two talks, and they're essentially going to be one long talk. But the first part is we're going to talk about why secular art is terrible, why Hollywood, all those things are really bad and they hate your guts and all that stuff. And then our last talk is we're going to be talking about Christian movies and why they're really bad and why they're terrible. So we're going to go through both of those, and then we're going to offer a way that I believe we can fix it. But when we're talking about these things, the first thing you might ask is, how can you say that an art or a movie is good or bad? Doesn't everybody have their own opinions on the kind of movies you like how many of you like horror movies? How many of you don't like horror movies? Right? So how can you make the case that one movie is good and another movie is bad if there's people in here that have different opinions on different kinds of genre? And so to be clear, God has made us all different. We have different likes and different dislikes. But that doesn't necessarily negate the fact that art has an objective standard for what is good. The Bible makes it very clear that God has an objective standard for what is good. Obviously, in creation, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and God saw the light, and it was good. And then he continues to create things. He says, God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas, and God saw that it was good. This goes on 8 times throughout the beginning of Genesis, God creating art, God creating things, and he then says that these things are good. And of course, he looks at everything he's made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning. It was the 6th day. So there obviously has to be some sort of objective, universal, unchanging, forever and ever standard as to what is good when you look at art and when you look at creation, when you look at things in the sky. When an atheist looks in the stars and goes, wow, that's beautiful, there has to be something internal within him that makes him able to say that. And the same is true for our art, for humans, the work that humans make. Humans are, of course, created in the image of God. So when we create, when we make art, when we do art, we are a reflection of God, and so that we're being like Christ by being artists. So Proverbs 22:29 says, "Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men." I showed you earlier this week, a gifted, talented artists that were standing before kings. This word here, skillful, has to assume that something is skillful, that something is done skillful. If you do woodworking and you put together a chair and you sit on it and you fall to the floor, we objectively know 100% that is not skillful craftsmanship. But we also live in a society where you can put pieces of wood together in weird shapes that don't mean anything, call it a chair, and it goes up in an art museum for millions of dollars, and people buy it, right? So that's the society of the topsy-turvy, upside-down world we live in. Again, so one of the things, if you're really interested in art, it's really good to do a deep dive in Exodus chapter 35. Exodus chapter 35 is when God brings together two men, a Bezalel and a Holiab, and he gifts these men with intelligence, with wisdom, with understanding for any skillful and artistic craft. If you want to look in the Bible and say, who are the artists in the Bible? It's these two guys. These are the ones that God gave artistic abilities to be able to build the temple. And it would take me all day to go through the passage, but Exodus chapters 35 and 36 goes through every sort of art and craftsmanship that was required to build the temple and every part of the temple, and how God used these two men to use arts to be able to design it. But anyway, it says in 36:1, it says, Bezalel and Aholiab, and every craftsman in whom the Lord has put skill and intelligence to know how to do any work. So God did not use people. This is very important, especially important for our talk later today when we talk about why Christian movies are bad and if they are bad. It's important to understand that God did not use just any Christian who just wanted to help to build his temple. He used the ones that were skilled. It was important to him that that the temple was a beautiful place that was created with excellence and ability. And there were Christians who did not have skill. They were able to bring offerings to the temple in the sense to help build the temple. But the ones that actually worked and constructed were those that God had put skill and intelligence to know how to do the work that they were instructed to do. Now, this is very important because a lot of times when we talk about art, or especially Christian art, we go, well, they're just doing ministry. Right? Well, the movies are bad, but, they're evangelistic, and we'll get into that later. But this is important to understand when we talk about art. God has in his mind a knowledge of art being done well, being done skillfully, and being done with intelligence. That's another important aspect of art. Secular art is not very smart. It's not very rich. It doesn't incite the intellect that well. And so, of course, a lot of you guys are probably familiar with this key passage from Presuppositional Apologetics. We hear it all the time, especially if you watch or listen to or read Greg Bahnsen, right? Like Greg Bahnsen, Rushdoony, all those presuppositional guys. They essentially made the claim that there is no such thing as atheism, because you know with certainty that God exists. There's nothing I can do to prove to you that God exists. You are created in the image of God. You know it by default. And as the Bible says, you suppress it in unrighteousness. In Romans 1:18-20, it says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse." So, when you're talking to an atheist, then they say, "I don't believe in God, there's not enough evidence." You point to Romans 1 and say, "Well, yeah, there is. You're created in the image of God. Look at the stars, look at the skies, look at the heavens, look at the way the grass grows and explodes seeds at just a trigger." There was a video I watched on YouTube, and they did a super slow motion camera. It was actually the guy Destin from Smarter Every Day. I don't know if you watch those videos, but if you do, at the very end of every video, he puts a Bible verse, and they're really good Bible verses. But he does a lot of science videos, and he did this super slow-mo phantom camera of a seed of grass and how it acts as a slap bracelet in reverse. So when it's triggered, it just snaps off, and then all those seeds just spew out. Like, that is design. There is something inherent with it that is beautiful. When you watch slow motion camera work at like super high frame rates, you see there's just a beauty to creation in everything it does. Nothing is random. Everything has art and design. And so you can see this now. Since God declared his art good, he declared an objective standard for determining art is good. And because creation is objectively good, you can know for certain that God exists. And if you know for certain that God exists, then you can know that art is good. But we live in a world where we say that art doesn't matter. It's whatever you want it to be. It can be anything you want it to be. But my position is that art, you know when something is bad art and people are pulling a scam on you. Like, you know that. and you know when something is not good. So this, by the way, is... are any of you guys familiar with John Barros? He does abortion clinic ministry in Florida. I think he might have spoken here, if I believe. But anyway, he came to visit me in Florida, and he wanted to go and do something because he works at the abortion clinic 6 days a week, and he never gets a break. And he came out there to Arizona, and he says, I don't want to go to the abortion clinic today. I don't know if he said that, but he said, I want to go do something in Arizona. What is there to do? And I was like, I have no idea what there is to do. I've just been working all the time. And so he looked it up and he found this museum. This museum is the Musical Instrument Museum in Scottsdale, Arizona. It was run or founded or started at least by the CEO of Target, who, as you guys know, is a crazy liberal. This museum is really amazing because there's thousands of musical instruments, and when you go there, they give you headphones and a little pack, and then they have this like really cool way of like really directional sounds, so you only hear the instruments play like if you're like right in front of it. It's really neat, and there's thousands of instruments, so you can spend all day listening to instruments from all over the world throughout all of history, and it's awful. The reason it's awful is because 90% of the museum, or most of the museum floor, is filled with pre-Christian musical instruments. Musical instruments from before Christianity. So most of the stuff you see and you hear play are these like one-string banjos that have like one note, or there's these like stuff like this where you have these one-note horns and stuff, and this is all pre-Christian stuff, and it sounds terrible. And then you think, well, I can't wait to get to the part where it talks about Christianity and how Christianity brought forth music and all this stuff. And there's only like one little booth in this museum talking about the importance of hymns, but there's no mention of Christianity anywhere. Although, as you go through time in this museum, which you do, you travel through the centuries, you get to the point where Christianity has met, and you get to the post-Reformation forms of music, and then you suddenly go from one-string banjos to actual orchestras. And you're so thankful when you get to that point, because you're not just hearing plunk, 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 plunk everywhere you go. You're actually hearing orchestral compositions, and you see pianos, and you see guitars with chords and melodies, and all these sort of things that were obviously given to us by the Christian worldview. But it's interesting, when you go there, they try to make it seem like, oh no, this one-string banjo is just as good of music as this. And you go, no, it's not. It's not. It's just not. And it's pretty obvious to see that, even though they try to suppress that. There is this modern teaching we know, postmodernism. Postmodernism is a late 20th century style and concept in the arts, architecture, and criticism that represents a departure from modernism and has at its heart a general distrust of grand theories and ideologies, as well as a problematical relationship with any notion of art. I think postmodernism is a huge problem, because if God created the world and called it good, and postmodernism comes along and says, it can be whatever it is, that is a stain on the character of God, and we shouldn't allow that to happen. Postmodernism, of course, says there is no truth, and from postmodernism, you get all sorts of crazy, ridiculous, stupid art forms. What I'm about to show you is a video from. It's a recreation. This is at the Musical Instrument Museum in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's a recreation of a guy named John Cage. He is a composer, and he created an artwork called 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and it is an orchestral composition. You guys heard of this? Yeah, some of you guys have heard about this. and then, so I'm just going to play it. I'm going to do commentary over it. Don't worry, you're not going to miss anything because there is no music throughout this whole piece.
It presents 4 minutes and 33 seconds.
So I'm not going to show all 4 minutes and 33 seconds of this because it is excruciating. But this is him and his orchestra sitting there for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, not playing any music whatsoever. And on the sheet of paper, on the sheet of music, it just says rest, 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 rest for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. So this is supposedly, according to our world, brilliant musical composition. And it contains not a single note for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Just listen to how great it is. And there are these moments where they lift the piano. I'm sure that's because of what the music says, but I don't know enough about reading music to even know why that would matter on the notes. But I watched like 2 or 3 videos of these just to see, and they all lift their piano thing at the same time. But anyway, but this is the reaction from people at the end of this. I think this is fascinating. Whistling and cheers and applause, and they did nothing for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. That is, I think we can all say that that is not objectively good, but the problem with postmodernism is it doesn't want to say that there are things that are objectively good. It wants to say that that is actually really musical brilliance, because he worked within the framework of the music and this and that and that, and it's really it's damaging to a God. Well, I mean, God can't be damaged, but it's offensive to a God that creates the stars in the heavens and says it's good, and then he tells us to go into the world, be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth, and we do stuff like that. That is not a reflection of the handiwork of God, and I would say it's embarrassing, and they should be ashamed of themselves. This is actually really fascinating. I don't know if you guys heard about this. This is a banana that was duct taped to a wall that sold for $120,000. But, by the way, there was demand, so they upped the price, and they sold several of these bananas for about $150,000, because isn't it an incredible piece of work of art? Now, there is something inside of you that makes you laugh when you see that. Now I'll tell you, as a business person, I go, that's brilliant. I'm like, that. If I could figure out a way to sell pieces of artwork like that, the amount of what's the cost of a banana? Maybe 25 cents maybe, and then a strip of duct tape, maybe another 50 cents, and the profit margins on that is incredible. It's really brilliant. So I really like that idea. As a business, it's great, and I'm a free market, hardcore capitalist, so I think that's great. But as a piece of art, it is an embarrassment, and it isn't. Not only that, it's an offense to God, I think, to make art like that and call it magnificent and to value it highly. This is another piece of art. It sold for $2 million, and it looks like something you hang on your refrigerator that your kid drew. So I just think that's fascinating, and I want to. If you've ever been to Washington D.C., there's all the Smithsonian museums, and one day I was out there in Washington D.C. I thought I'd spend a day out there by myself just to go see some of the art museums, and I drove up there. I was living in Virginia at the time, so I drove up there and I went to this Smithsonian Museum of Modern Art. And you see pieces like this, the Museum of Modern Art, there's just nonsense on the walls that are considered high value. But actually above it is the National Portrait Gallery, and you have all these beautiful portraits of presidents and famous people, and most of them are really well done. Let me see. So this is Salvatore. What did he do? Hold on, sorry. Oh, yes. Okay, there's a video. I didn't see it. So let me go back. That's why it was black. It was confusing me. Okay, so this guy created a statue. It's incredible. He sold it for, I think it was $18,000. He created a statue that's invisible. And this is, I'll play this video real quick, and you'll be able to see it. I don't know if you can, is it playing? It's a really tiny video. I wasn't able to maximize it. But yes, okay, so here it is. He's walking up to it. And there it is. It's that square of tape on the ground. This is his invisible statue. It's called Buddha in Contemplation. And he sold this for $18,000. And here's what he says about it. He says, therefore, it has energy that is condensed and transformed into particles that is into us, much like how we shape a God we've never seen. So I don't think, one of the things about presuppositional apologetics that Greg Bahnsen says is he says, there is no neutrality. And this goes to art too. You're neutral. Everything you make is a reflection of your worldview. Everything you make means something. When an artist sprays paint on a wall and says, it doesn't have a meaning, come up with your own interpretation, he's lying to you. Everything he does, every stroke of the brush has some sort of meaning and is formed from your religious worldview, especially if your religion is a false religion. So here you have a guy who obviously says, we've never seen God. He has a pretty low view of God, so he says, I'm going to make this statue that's a reflection of God, and it's nothing, right? So it's obviously it's called Buddha in Contemplation. Buddhists are usually atheists. But anyway, so going back to that, Museum of Modern Art, you're seeing all these amazing portraits. It's pretty incredible. I don't know if you guys ever saw Obama's portrait, which was done by a postmodern artist, and it's really bad. You see this, some people have made memes on it. Internet just trashed it about how terrible it is. He's sitting in a chair. There's leaves. It's weird. It doesn't make any sense. This is his national portrait. Compare this to Kennedy's portrait or Thomas Jefferson's or some of the portraits that we have on our bills for presidents. And this is what he chose. It's just insane. And it just goes to show that a worldview that rejects Christianity doesn't know how to make good art. Now, we were talking about paintings, but I'd like to present to you that movies and television shows are also objectively good or bad, even if they're done by unbelievers. Now, when we talk about this, I want to talk from a broad perspective, because I'm not going to talk about specific, if there's specific moments or language in a production or whatever. I want to talk about the overall theme. We can go, okay, that's good. And the first one I want to talk about, how many of you guys seen The Mandalorian? Yeah, okay. Mandalorian. Why is The Mandalorian, when we watch The Mandalorian, we go, that is just pure Star Wars. There's something about The Mandalorian that makes men go, yes, I love this. And it makes women go, yes, I love this. There's no weird switching of sexual roles in it like they did with the modern Star Wars. Original Star Wars is a story of adoption. It's a story of father and son relationship, and it's men risking their lives to save women. The newer Star Wars, which of course is headed up by Kathleen Kennedy, who's a feminist, and by the way, the internet has requested over and over again that Jon Favreau, the guys that did The Mandalorian, actually Disney fire her and put Jon Favreau in their place, because they go, well, he understands Star Wars better. Well, look at The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian is a story of adoption. It's a story of a father-son relationship, and it's a man risking his life for a child. And there's something within that framework that people watch and go, that's really good. An interesting story about Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau is also the director of Elf, if you remember ever watching Elf with Will Ferrell. That was the first movie that he ever really did, his first big movie that he ever did. He was an actor before that. And the reason he felt called to that script is because his mom died during Christmas time. And so every year during Christmas, him and his father would watch Christmas movies. So when he read the script for Elf, he says, wow, man, there's a really strong father-son relationship here. And those are the movies that Jon Favreau tends to make, whether it's The Mandalorian, whether it's The Lion King or The Jungle Book. I think he did one called Chef, but they're all his movies have this really strong father-son connection because that's his worldview. And it just so happens that we live in a culture where seeing a strong father taking care of his children is just not something we see much. And then when John makes a movie, whether it's a TV show or whatever, we go, man, he's one of the best directors in the world. And it's not really true. It's just he is telling a pure, good, and beautiful story from a perspective that our world has so neglected. And so I think this, when we look at films, we can see these sort of things. We can see there is something good and inherent in these stories that make them beautiful. So when we see liberal worldviews and values being propagated, there is something inherent within us as image bearers that scream that what we are watching is unnatural. This is why liberals, they can't tell good stories. They can't do it. It can't be done. And my friend Jason Farley, he's on our board, one of our founders at Lore, and we're going to watch videos of him talking about art, Christian art specifically, in the next talk. But he said that one time he was watching this movie, and the movie, I don't remember the name. I tried to find it, but the essential premise of the movie was you have a woman who becomes pregnant, and she has to decide between her child or her career. And ultimately, at the end, her big aha moment is, I'll have both. And he's like, yeah, well, it just wasn't a good ending. Because there's something inherently inside of you that goes, no, that's not right. Like you're expecting her to sacrifice her career to save her child. Like that's what you're hoping for. There's something inside of you internally, because you're an image bearer of God, that says the woman should quit her job and just focus on the life of the child. The woman should sacrifice herself for the life of the child. And then the liberals go, we're going to twist it. And we're going to say, I'm going to have both. And you go, that's okay. Because it's not good. Because you're an image bearer of God, and God has given you a knowledge of knowing what is good and true and beautiful. Again, so God created man in His own image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them, and He called them good. So we talk about this sort of stuff like the Reformation, for example. Michelangelo, this is Renaissance, right? Renaissance art. They sculpted, everything was very humanistic. Everything was very man-centered. Man is the center of all things. And so their artwork reflected that. Straight lines, just giant hands, like just man as man and perfect. And then you get to the Reformation and you get to people like Rembrandt. And Rembrandt, who is, influenced by the Dutch Reformed school of thought, he's Calvinist. He knows that men are inherently sinners. They're depraved. They're fallen. They get sick. They get ill. They die. He paints portraits, this is of himself, by the way, with warts and wrinkles and aging. And there is a beauty to this that you don't see in the sort of view of man in the Renaissance. And so Reformational art has a very distinct style because, again, worldviews matter. And we're still seeing that idea that worldviews matter today. Why do you guys think that Hollywood is making so much money with superhero movies? They're making a lot of money with superhero movies. It's because there's something inherent within you as an image bearer of God that knows that the world is not right and we need someone outside of ourselves to save us. There were two Jewish guys. They created Superman. They knew this. You can read tons of stuff online, even from secular sources. Like this is Entertainment Weekly, right? Not a good Christian source at all. But Superman as Jesus, Christian imagery in The Man of Steel. Have you guys heard of on the CW? Superman and Lois is out right now. I don't know if you guys heard about it, but for the longest time, Superman has kind of gotten the blunt, because what happened was you had Marvel and DC, and Marvel essentially said, you know what, we need superheroes who are flawed. We need superheroes who have a problem, who have a weakness that within themselves internally. Those are the kind of superheroes we need. And to their credit, it does make better character stories, but it creates a challenge for a character like Superman, who is seen as this perfect guy. He's raised on a farm. He's white. That creates a problem for Hollywood, apparently, nowadays. So it creates this problem. How do we make anything interesting with Superman? The guy's basically invincible, and his only weakness is like the rarest mineral in all the earth. So how do we make these sort of stories? And so Hollywood has sort of abandoned Superman. But if you watch Superman and Lois that just came out on the CW, it is an amazing recreation of Superman and Lois Lane when they're living on the farm and they're raising their twins. And it shows in a really powerful way that I don't think Hollywood has done in a long time with Superman. His weakness is being a dad and raising his kids. And he has to go and stop a train from colliding off a bridge and be back in time for dinner, or his wife gets mad at him. It sounds crazy, but it makes you go that it shows Superman as human, like he does have some inherent weakness, and his goal is to be a great father. It's really amazing that they got away with that on the CW without a gay character yet. I'm sure that'll come. But as of now, it's pretty incredible what they've done with that and have been allowed to do. But most of the time, you don't see that with superhero movies. You don't see those pure stories. You don't see where, Superman's problem isn't drunkenness. It's not like Tony Stark, where he's into women and an adulterer. You don't see that sort of thing with superheroes. And so usually Hollywood tries to stay away from Superman, or they do a really bad job at trying to make Superman bad when they shouldn't, because he is a pure, innocent character, and he always has been. And the reason he was that way, by the way, is because it was made by two Jewish men who were looking for the Messiah. And so they wrote Superman. His father sends him to Earth to save the world. And they didn't believe Jesus was that Messiah, so they wrote in Superman as the Messiah, and they stole a lot of truth from Scripture to give Superman that image. So if you say that Superman is a Jesus figure in history, well, it's because the people that wrote it were writing him as a messianic figure. And so, but Hollywood strayed away from these sort of superhero movies. We can't have superhero movies. We can't have people who are good, who really want to do good things, or have an objective standard within them of good and evil. We have to make movies like this, where we show that the villain is just a guy who's had a bad day, or he's just had a bad life, and this is he's a person we all can relate to. Everybody has the ability to be a Joker or a Cruella, because Hollywood likes these anti-hero movies where there is the boundaries of good and evil are blurred. Joker was bullied. So obviously it makes sense, because he was bullied, that he can go and shoot and kill a bunch of people, right? We can relate with that, right? That's okay. We can have compassion and empathy for that, right? So secular art will always sacrifice stories for agenda, and I want to asterisk that and say that Christian art does the same thing. They will make a terrible story to push their altar call moments in their movie. So they will completely destroy a film, but so will secular audiences. Everybody does, again, because art is not neutral, and art is not made vainly with any sort of neutrality. So this is, I don't know if you guys saw, This Is Us, completely destroyed their entire storyline because they wanted to put COVID-19 and racial injustice in it. This is from the director. We made this decision collectively to allow the world of COVID into our show, Fogelman says. Then the protests talking about the racial protests, the racial protests forced us to kind of reconvene as a group and say, how can we not address this on the show while we're addressing COVID? How can we still address COVID without addressing this? Right? So they're not just making a good story. At this point, they said, you know what, we had all 6 seasons of This Is Us mapped out. We knew where the story was. It started out as this, beautiful story of adoption, of a family adopting and raising triplets. And then now all of a sudden COVID came. Oh, we have to make This Is Us not about adoption now. It can't be about that anymore. Let's make it about COVID and racial reconciliation and the racial wars. And they completely destroyed it. There was outrage on the internet. They completely sacrificed all the work they've done in the past seasons leading up to that to sort of push this narrative and agenda to their shame. So that is, we see that over and over and over again nowadays. We cannot watch a movie on TV or TV show without them pushing some sort of trans figure, some sort of LGBT character, some sort of liberal theme. The reason is because art is a form of revealing who it is that you worship. As Christians, we believe that art is a way that reveals who the God of the Bible is. God created art as general revelation. It is a revelation of Himself, and everything you need to know about Him to send you to hell is widely available in Scripture. Now, special revelation is what saves you, but general revelation can't save anybody. But everybody in their art reflects their worldview. So this is how we can watch something on TV and go, that is terrible. That's a terrible storyline. And when we usually see a movie and we go, man, that's a really good movie, it's because it relates to us in some way as image bearers. And this is the thing you should walk away with, is that pagans have no stories. The unbelievers have no stories. They have to steal from our worldview in order to be able to tell you a good story. And that is an advantage for us as we're building lore. People always ask, well, yeah, but how are you, what's your secret sauce? They always say, when you talk to investors, and they say, well, what's your secret sauce? What are you going to do that nobody else is going to do? And the truth is, we're going to say, well, we have a Christian worldview, and we can base whether or not a movie or TV show is good because we always compare it with a Christian worldview. And then we'll get into that on why Christian movies don't do that later today. But thank you guys for your time.
Okay, just a reminder that this is the last book table opportunity. So this is your last opportunity. There is one extra large shirt left. First come, first serve. That's $10 if you want an extra large. And just a reminder, I'll remind you about that later, but we do need to check out between 3 and 4:30 at the lobby, at the Hart lobby, to return your key and get your check back for your room. I think that's it. Okay. You are dismissed until 10:30. Okay.